World Regions Geography 110, Latin America and the Caribbean, Part 6, Cultural Practices, Social Differences, and Identity. So a lot of when we think of the Caribbean, in particular, we think of reggae music, we may think of salsa dancing, Latin music, lots of different types of music and dance come out of the Caribbean and Latin America that influence us greatly here in America. We often don't think about the literature and art and the prizes, the great artists or the great writers, because our country uh, primary language is English, and so that's what we look at. Food, of course, a lot of that. Baseball, if you watch Major League Baseball, if you're a fan, you know there's a lot of Caribbean and Latin American players. Soccer's becoming a bigger sport. Football, you know. Um, I have a picture here of Usain Bolt because I like track and he's a great track athlete. Cultural practice, social difference, and identity continued. Gender relations, machismo and marianismo. These are the masculine and feminine versions of a Latino ideal man and woman. The machismo, having lots of children, man runs the family, makes all the decisions, the wife is subservient to him, he rules the roost. Um, Marianismo is where the woman is uh, modeled on the Virgin Mary, chaste, demure, never talks back, lets the man make all the decisions. I don't know that either one of these truly exist anymore, though some people do try to make it work. Institutional bias against women. And one of the things you'll like here, overall gender gap, it's pretty even across all. But I want you to take a look right here at Cuba. So even though Cuba is overall gender gap is not any greater or lesser to the most part than the rest of Latin America. If you look over here at women in parliament, the female to male ratio, much more representation for women in government in Cuba. But then you get over into this wage equality, women in the labor force. I think these reflect a lot of Western society in general. There's no data on Cuba there, but anyway, it's just kind of an interesting little thing. Uh, Now, demography and urbanization, um, much more so than in the U.S., you have a lot of racial mixing. In the US, you might have it, but you don't really think about it too much. Like mestizo is Spanish or European and Native American. That's probably the most common group in Latin America and the Caribbean. Mulatto, that is European and black, a mix. Zambo is um, black and indigenous people, so Native American and black mix. And maroon communities are something that you didn't really have in the United States, though there were some in the Indian territories in Oklahoma. But maroon communities basically are slaves who escaped from slavery um, and went into interior regions or isolated regions and formed their own communities and governed themselves. There were some maroon communities in Jamaica. The most famous was in Brazil, which actually formed an independent country and had a large territory for about 50 or 60 years before it was reincorporated in the country. Um, Rapid population growth, high birth rates, in other words, in Latin America. And the population is growing in the colonial ports and the cities. So the big cities are really growing. Highland settlements in the Andes and Central America changing fertility rates. And what you look at here, like if you look at Brazil, these are population pyramids for Brazil and Paraguay. And this, the two colors obviously distribute between male and female. And these are the age tranches. And tranches are just groups of about 4 years, 5 to 9. So this is everybody that's male in 5 to 9 and everybody that's female. As typically you'll have a few more females. About 51% of all births are females, about 49% males. So you have a slightly more females. When you look here at this pyramid, you see the shape of it. That's a normal shape. But what's happening, what this tells you right here, is the birth rate is dropping, is stabilizing and dropping. And whereas at this point in time, these begin moving up, as they move into this region, you'll have a little bit wider, and what will happen is you'll begin to have this curved in at the bottom. You can see it right there, curving in. And as it moves a little farther up, it will curve in even more. And where that's important, it's important in two areas. One, as it curves in, that means the population at some point is going to start to decrease. So as these people get older and start dying off, then this population is going to start to decrease. But in the meantime, it means you have fewer people consuming, fewer people providing for the older. As you have fewer children, you have one child to take care of two parents as they get older, as opposed to 2 or 3 or 4. Now you look over here in Paraguay, it's much more dramatic, the change. It's less gradual than in Brazil. And consequently, this is going to move up, and as it moves up, this will continue to slide down, and it's going to impact their economy, because when you have a dramatically shrinking population, you're going to see a shrinking economy because there's less consumption going on. Migration within Latin America, within the region, is rural to urban. So what you see is people living in rural areas where there's not a lot of opportunity are moving to the cities, and they are most likely moving into ghettos or areas of shanty towns. Some of the push-pull factors are, the push factor is that there's no jobs in the rural areas, so that's a push on people, pushing them out of the region. The pull factor in the city is the increased opportunities. There may be more opportunities, but there's also more people competing at that bottom level. So the diaspora is simply a migrant group that goes to another area, another country, but maintains an identity, such as now they're talking about the braceros. Braceros, for those of you that may not know, were it was a visa category that was used from 1942 until 1965, and it was renewed numerous times during that, and it was a negotiated treaty with the U.S. government and the Mexican government to provide work visas for Mexicans to come in and do primarily farm labor, but other types of labor also. A lot of they were supposed to stay for like 9 months, and then they had to go back to Mexico for 3 months. Well, a lot of people just stayed, and so some of you may have relatives that were part of the Bracero program that eventually became citizens. Remittances are the money that people send home, and this is really big in Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean. In many countries in the region, remittances are the #1 source of foreign currency. Many countries, such as Mexico, has organized programs to encourage illegal migration as a way to maintain remittance flows by replenishing the migrants, because basically migrants, when they move to a new area, they initially send money home, but after a period of years, and the research shows that it's usually 5 to 7 years, they'll quit sending money home. They become what we call embedded in the local region, and they either have brought their family to live with them, and then they quit sending money. So that's why a lot of governments, El Salvador, Mexico, a lot of Caribbean countries, Dominican Republic, they encourage migration and keeping people migrating in order to maintain remittance flows, which keeps the company solvent in terms of the international market, the global markets. Migration from region to region, from the region to the U.S. has dropped off significantly since 2005. The economic downturn cut down a lot of opportunities, and therefore there's not the pull factor anymore. Now this, you can look it over, you can kind of see the flows, where people are going. Take a few minutes, you can review this slide. I think it's a good slide. It's interesting to look at where people are going. People from Ecuador going to Spain. There's a book, Transnational Migrants, by David Kyle, that talks about that. They're rural to urban. A lot of times in the U.S. we think simply of Mexico and Central America to the U.S., but there's a lot of people out of the Haiti and Dominican Republic here that come to the U.S. Puerto Ricans, but Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. A lot of people down here in Aruba, Dutch colonies, things, they go to England, they go to Aruba, they go to France, and they can go there without any problems. The highly urbanized region, what I have here is a picture of Rio, and this is the nice part of town, and this is the favelas, which is the shanty towns where migrants tend to group in, and they throw together these shacks and live up there. They don't own the land, and it's usually a little less desirable. There's usually not plumbing and heating and things like that. So there's some other issues that arise. Urban primacy. What we mean by that is that most of the population in Latin America is concentrated in these big, huge urban areas. Mexico City, Guadalajara, Rio, Sao Paulo, Santiago in Chile, Caracas in Venezuela. And these poor create a lot of social and environmental problems because there's not sewer, there's not water, so you can imagine some of the problems that arise there. Trash is thrown. It's not a pretty place. Future geography, sustainable development. There's a move in Latin America, driven somewhat by outside forces, for sustainable development. Public attitudes are changing. They want to manage resources and demands and reduce pollution. If you saw the Olympics, how disgusting the water was. I mean, I can't imagine going to Rio and going to the beach, as nasty as it looks. Emerging economies, they're becoming more diversified, wealthier economies. Brazil in particular, though Brazil's economy has kind of collapsed with energy. Democracy and public attitudes, there's a move towards more democracy, to reduce corruption and crime. That's always been a problem in Latin America. And that's the end.